Every time you tap your card, send some money, or take out a loan, you're taking part in a system with a dark and bloody secret. A system dreamed up not by economists in suits, but by warrior monks in armor. This is the wild story of how the Knights Templar, a holy order that had sworn off worldly wealth, accidentally created the world's first international bank, and how that very power led to their brutal end, sparking conspiracy theories that are still whispered about today. History remembers their end in fire. On March 18, 1314, Jacques de Molay, the last Grand Master of the Knights Templar, was chained to a stake in Paris and burned alive. His order was branded heretics, their leaders tortured, their wealth seized by kings and the church. Officially, the Templars were gone, and yet their shadow never left us. Whispers tell of treasures spirited away under cover of night, fleets vanishing from French harbors, and sacred relics carried into secrecy. Some say they guarded the Holy Grail, others the Ark of the Covenant, or even the Shroud of Christ. Whether truth or myth, the suggestion endures. These knights did not merely protect pilgrims, but the deepest mysteries of faith itself. On Fleet Street in London, tucked behind a stone arch and hidden from the chaos of the modern city, lies a quiet courtyard. Here stand a round chapel consecrated in 1185, the Temple Church, once the English stronghold of the Knights Templar. But this was more than a sanctuary of worship. It was the birthplace of something far more transformative, the first true Bank of London. The year is 1119. The smoke of the First Crusade still lingers. Jerusalem has been wrenched into Christian hands, but the victory is fragile. The holy city may glitter in the distance, yet the roads leading there are graveyards in waiting. Pilgrims shuffle through deserts and rocky passes, clutching their meager belongings, only to be set upon by raiders. To walk to the Holy Land was to gamble with your soul and your life. And then, from the chaos, comes a vow. A handful of knights, little more than 9 men, led by a French noble named Hugues de Payens, swear themselves to a mission no less than holy. They promise to dedicate their swords and their very lives to guarding the helpless faithful. They take shelter on the ancient Temple Mount, where legends whispered that Solomon once raised his temple. From those ruins, they drew their name, the poor fellow soldiers of Christ and of the Temple of Solomon. The world would come to call them the Knights Templar. They were an enigma, men caught between two worlds. Warriors who lived like monks, monks who killed like warriors. They swore to own nothing, to share everything, to live in poverty and obedience. And yet, within years, Europe was pouring its riches into their hands. Families donated land, estates, coin, even their own sons, in exchange for the knights' prayers and protection. Imagine the sight: knights in blood-stained armor kneeling in silence, their swords laid beneath flickering candles, even as their coffers swelled with royal gifts. They became at once an army and a monastery, feared on the battlefield, revered in the chapel. Their rise was sealed at the Council of Troyes in 1129, when the Church, guided by the formidable Bernard of Clairvaux, gave the Templars its official blessing. From that moment, they answered to no king, no lord, no earthly master, only to the Pope himself. They were given exemptions from taxes, laws, and oversight. Their network of castles and preceptories soon stretched from London to Jerusalem. What began as a ragged brotherhood of 9 poor knights had become something else entirely, a disciplined, secretive, international order. And though they had sworn to poverty, the irony was already beginning to take shape. For the Templars would soon learn that power did not only come from the sword or the cross. It could also come from something far more dangerous, from money. The Templar transformation did not begin with steel, but with gold. For all the glory of the Crusades, there was a grim and mundane truth. Money moved armies as surely as faith moved souls. And in the 12th century, money was a problem soaked in blood. In an age before paper notes or banks, wealth was heavy: gold and silver, sacks of coin clinking like bells for the ears of every thief. Imagine trudging across mountains and deserts with your life's fortune tied to your saddle. Every step, every mile, was a silent prayer that you would not be ambushed, murdered, and left to rot by the roadside. Nobles faced the same peril. Merchants, too. Even pilgrims bound for Jerusalem carried what little they had in coin. To move wealth across a continent was to paint a target on your back. And yet, the Templars were uniquely placed to solve this crisis. They had something no merchant guild or king could match: an international network of castles and preceptories, guarded by armed brothers sworn to discipline and secrecy. From the rolling fields of England to the deserts of the Holy Land, their red cross marked not just warriors, but safe havens. Here, in the shadow of bloodshed, they made a leap no one expected. They began to move money without moving money. It was a revolution disguised as simplicity. A nobleman in London could hand his coin to the Templars, who would record it in their secret ledgers. In exchange, he would receive a coded parchment, a letter of credit, meaningless to thieves but priceless to its owner. Weeks later, that same man could ride into Jerusalem, present the document, and receive the same value in gold from the Templar treasury there. The risk of robbery vanished. What he carried was not coin, but trust, secured by the reputation of men who feared no king and bowed to no lord but the Pope. It was, in essence, the world's first traveler's check. But it was also more than that. From this humble solution, a way to save pilgrims from bandits, grew the foundations of something far more dangerous: a private financial empire. An empire built not on sword or crowns, but on faith, secrecy, and the flow of invisible wealth. And as with all empires, it would make them powerful, too powerful. By 1150, the Templars had created the world's first international banking system. It was a system of astonishing sophistication, a medieval precursor to the banknote and the credit card. They were, in essence, the Western Union of the Crusades. They built a private network of finance spanning Europe and the Levant, loyal not to kings, but to the Pope, run by men who renounced personal wealth yet managed unimaginable sums. Soon, they expanded their services. They managed the estates of nobles who went on crusade, pioneered systems resembling modern trusts, and even issued early forms of bills of exchange in Lyon. They found clever ways around the church's ban on interest, charging fees instead of usury. Because of their reputation for honesty and military discipline, people trusted them more than kings. By the mid-13th century, they weren't just protecting pilgrims. They were managing the wealth of Europe itself. Henry III of England once pawned his crown jewels to the Templars to cover his debts. Thanks to a papal decree in 1139, the Templars answered only to the Pope. Their network of preceptories became the world's first true branch banking system. They safeguarded treasuries for monarchs, collected taxes for the Pope, and provided enormous loans. They financed wars, royal weddings, and even the day-to-day expenses of kings. Their power was staggering. At one point, they even purchased the island of Cyprus outright. They owned farms, vineyards, and a fleet of ships. From 9 knights, they had grown into something like the world's first multinational corporation. But with such power came enemies. The Templars' downfall began on a single morning. October 13th, 1307, mass arrest of a Knights Templar in France under King Philip IV. At dawn, across France, the king's soldiers stormed Templar commanderies in a coordinated strike. Thousands of knights were dragged from their beds, shackled, and thrown into dungeons. Their Grand Master, Jacques de Molay, was seized in Paris. The charges were shocking: spitting on the cross, denying Christ, worshipping idols, obscene rituals. Under torture, many confessed, but these confessions were born not of guilt, but of fire and iron. Later, some tried to recant, but the damage was done. King Philip IV, drowning in debt to the Templars, saw their destruction as both justice and opportunity. He leaned on Pope Clement V, and together they crushed the order. On May 12, 1310, dozens of knights who withdrew their confessions were burned alive in Paris. In 1312, Pope Clement formally dissolved the Templars. Their lands were meant for the Knights Hospitaller, but Philip seized much for himself. The end came in 1314, when Jacques de Molay was led to the flames. Chroniclers claim he refused to confess again, instead declaring the innocence of his order. As fire consumed him, he is said to have cursed both Pope and King, and within a year, both were dead. The Templars were gone, or so it seemed. When Philip's men opened the Paris temple vaults, they found nothing. The treasure was gone. Had someone warned them? Did their fleet escape, carrying gold and relics into the unknown? Legends insist they were not just bankers, but guardians of the sacred. Some whisper they held the Holy Grail, others the Ark of the Covenant, or even the Shroud of Turin. These relics, if they ever possessed them, vanished into history's shadows. The myths go further, that surviving Templars fled to Scotland and fought at Bannockburn, that they ceded their knowledge into the Freemasons, who centuries later carried their symbols into a new age. Some tales even claim they sailed across the Atlantic, long before Columbus, bearing their secrets to hidden shores. Historians will tell you most survivors faded quietly into other orders or retirement. But the secrecy of their fall created fertile ground for legend. And so the Templars, warrior monks turned bankers, destroyed as heretics, live on as one of history's most enduring mysteries. Remarkably, modern organizations bearing the Templar name exist today as charitable or fraternal groups, symbolic heirs of the order, but without the wealth, military power, or political clout of their medieval predecessors. The Templars' true legacy is financial. Letters of credit, distant asset management, and branch networks foreshadowed modern banking. Their story is a reminder. Financial innovation can shift power, provoke envy, and invite destruction. Medieval banking, like today's global institutions, thrived on trust, obscured obligations, and invisible networks. The Templars prove the ultimate currency is not gold. It is faith in people and institutions. And as history shows, power in private hands carries danger. The Knights Templar were not mere relics of legend. They were architects of a financial revolution, warriors of faith, and the keepers of secrets both worldly and sacred. Their system transformed money, their downfall inspired myth, and their shadow still lingers in the hum of modern banks. If you enjoyed this dive into secret history, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more hidden tales. And tell us in the comments, what do you think happened to the lost treasure of the Templars? Thanks for joining us here at Hub Corona, and see you in the next video.